Look at it this way. If you're looking at industries now, whenever Nate and I were younger, the big push was you've got to go to college. You've got to be able to go ahead and do these things because this is the way to be successful. And that, if you really look at anything like that, any narrative that's being pushed, why are they pushing it?
Yeah.
And back then the push was because they needed those white collar workers. They need people to be, that was when computers were just really getting going. So it's like,
Yeah.
we need people to be able to do these types of things, and they didn't have them. So the push was go to college, learn this stuff so we can go ahead and fill those pieces. Well, guess what? They did a great job of marketing it and a great job of pushing it. And now you've got a huge lack of people in the trades, which are the foundational things of literally everything we've got in our lives, from our roads to our buildings that we live in.
Yeah.
So to all the places we go and shop. Welcome to the Builder Hacks Podcast, your go-to destination for cutting-edge strategies, time-tested systems, and invaluable insights to revolutionize your construction business and elevate your life. Join your hosts, Nate Piper and Keith Meals, seasoned contractors who are not just in the trenches, but are also pioneering the future of the industry through Concord University. In each episode, we dive deep into the minds of the industry's most accomplished building professionals, uncovering their secrets to success and sharing actionable tips to help you thrive. Whether you're a seasoned veteran or just starting out, our goal is to empower you to build a brighter future for yourself and for America. Tune in, level up, and let's build a better tomorrow together. This is the Builder Hacks Podcast. Build your future, building America. This topic, Nate, I think is going to be a huge one for a lot of people because it's something that's out there for so many. And I think it holds up the progress in the industry, really. So it's really what it comes down to, I think.
Yeah, I think this is one of the things that is that blinking, flashing red light that um, you know causes people concerns, and so
Yeah,
I'm glad that we're going to have this conversation today. So, well,
I
let's
think it's
dive
going to
into
be
it.
huge. Let's
Yeah,
go.
let's dive into it. So,
All right.
the question that comes up is, what are the things that are preventing people to come into an industry, especially an industry that is considered less than other industries, right? And what makes it appealing and what doesn't. And so I want to kick this conversation off with a question to Keith. What have you noticed over your time period in this industry that prevents people from coming into the construction trade or into the remodeling business? And what successes have they had along the way?
I think one of the biggest ones, Nate, I think, and you and I have talked about this before, there's no question about it, is literally the social stigma around it, meaning, what people say. What are other
Yeah.
people saying about you getting involved in this? Or you possibly exploring this? And that's one of the biggest challenges because no matter what we want, no matter what people say, most people are still very worried about what others think about them and what others might say about them. And whenever you're young, impressionable, especially as a teenager coming out of high school, that's one of the biggest challenges. I mean, half the time, the majority of teenagers I know are looking for acceptance, which means that, school's gone ahead and programmed them. You got to go to advanced education. You got to go to college to be able to be successful. If you don't do that, you're never going to go ahead and get where you want to go. And that's the huge challenge that ends up occurring is they get stuck in that mindset and they never even get the opportunity to look at something like construction. As soon as it gets brought up, it's like, no, that's the last thing in the world. So that we want to go ahead and do because we're supposed to go get that higher education. We're supposed to go ahead and do what all our friends are doing. They're going to college. That's how they become successful. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges. So in front of the construction industry right now, it's just getting the younger people, the people in high school, and getting ready to decide, am I going to college or am I going into a career right off the bat, just to give it an opportunity, even to look at it, and to
Yeah.
see what might be out there. So what do you think about that?
I agree with you, and I kind of expand on that a little bit more
Yeah.
because, um, I've got all age groups of kids, but the teenage years are always the challenging ones. It's like kids growing up, they listen to their parents until about the age of about 14. Some of them are a little bit younger, 12 and 13,
Definitely
but
depends.
those preteens, the teenage years, you know, they enjoy their parents and they listen to them. And then all of a sudden it transitions over and now they're in this pack group like you're talking about. And
Right.
they're in school and most of the schools are teaching them, you all have to do the same thing. And if you want to be successful in life, this is the path to go. And there's no other alternative. And so they look at, um, doing manual labor as a horrible thing. And the other part of it too is that, um, you know, a lot of kids today do not have the parents that have experience in doing things themselves, like fixing up around the house. They usually
Right.
have somebody that they'll bring in. So these
Hmm.
kids are never exposed to it,
Right.
and
That makes
and
it a
they're
huge challenge.
yeah, and they're there's a lot of them that don't parents that don't encourage the children to kind of like step into those careers. They have a stigma of what that career path is, and they project that image onto the child as well. And so it becomes like this overwhelming force. They get it from home, they get it from their friends, their peers, the schooling institution. Everything. And it's really kind of it's like a full force, you know, stigma that kids
And
are absorbing and saying, "Oh no, I'll never do that." And the flip side to that is that I've had the opportunity to work with kids who've never picked up a tool, who have
mhm,
never been in the industry, who have no idea what this is, and starting on day one, they actually enjoy it. They
right.
actually enjoy getting a little dirty. They
Hmm.
actually enjoy having some dirt or some grease on their hands. They actually enjoy picking up something and getting some instant gratification just
Right.
by seeing something move. And I agree with you. I think the stigmatism that's been shadowed over it through their peer group, through their parents, through their
Hmm.
school, all those pieces have been a heavy influence that prevents them from even trying.
And I think that one of the biggest things, like what you said earlier, is that it's that impression, it's that belief, so that this isn't the thing to do. And one of the pieces I'll put out there, and I challenge everyone, whether you're in high school and figuring out what you're going to do, or whether you're older and you've been doing things for a long time, is when beliefs are given to you from somebody else, is question that belief. Why do they have that belief? And
Mhm.
it's all that's a great question to ask. Whenever your counselors are saying, "Hey, you've got to go to college to be successful," always ask the question, well, there isn't another option? Because anytime you say there's only one option to anything, that's very rarely the case. And in this industry, Nate, I mean, we're all about, I call it challenge solving is what it is. Other people call it problem solving. So, but it's solving the challenges that are in front of you. And rarely is there only one way to do anything.
Yeah,
And
there's
whenever that's being brought up,
ways.
question, at least ask question. And it's not that you're challenging the authority or challenging the person who's bringing that to you. And that's the way you have to approach it. You want
Mhm.
to approach it as an inquisitive, like I'm just asking quite, what other ways is there to do this outside of college? What other opportunities are out there? What other options are available? What does that look like? How does that translate? And if they don't know, then start looking for other people who do have that information, who might be able to enlighten you. Someone who's in those types of fields, in different types of industries that you may not have thought about before, that aren't necessarily the traditional college route.
Absolutely. I think challenging that question or asking that question is imperative to the individual to kind of like seek out what it is that they're wanting.
Mhm.
What I hear a lot of times is like kids go off to college, they have no idea what they want to do, what they want to
I was one of them.
be, and they just kind of go through the motions like, well, Bobby's doing it and Susie's doing it, and I'm gonna just tag along. I'm gonna stay
Mhm.
inside the lane that
Right.
everybody else is in, and load them. All of a sudden, here it comes. My opportunity is going to arise when I get my degree. Well, does it? I don't know. Most of the time, they either change degrees or they don't even make it to the finish line, and then they're left with, well,
Yep.
what else do I do? And this is where we come back. And I don't have anything against Starbucks, but it seems like everybody ends up at Starbucks at some point in time, and they all become baristas or
It's the new
waiters.
convenience store job. So that's
Yeah,
what it comes down to. Yeah.
and I get it. And that's the old stigma. The world needs bartenders, right? They all need coffee.
But that part
Baristas.
right there where you say that, Nate, that's one of the most interesting pieces that goes with that is
Yeah,
the world literally needs everything.
everything.
And when you look at it, whether it's construction, whether it's going to college and getting a degree to be an attorney or an accountant or something in business or a doctor, whatever the case might be, there's positions out there for everybody. And realizing that some of those positions you really don't find much about if you go just that traditional, if the only route you look at is just the traditional higher education route. Because that isn't, they don't talk about this stuff there. And as a lot of people are aware, they don't talk about it in high school and in a lot of places anymore, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, they don't talk about it at all. I
Mm-mm.
mean, nowhere. Um, it's kind of funny. I did a quick research on the US labor statistics,
Mm-hmm.
and there are 48,000 different types of jobs in the US. 48,000. How come we only talk about like seven?
Right.
You know, there's
And
so
that,
many different jobs, there's so many different positions, there's so many things that need to happen, but we talk about like seven or eight categories, and then everybody wants to strive for the top piece, but nobody knows how to get there, and it's only the lucky few, and it always boggles my mind that people don't ask the question. They don't ask the questions like, is this the only route? Is
right.
this the only way to get to the finish line? Is this the only path through? And they just fall into it and get into that line, and
Yeah.
then they get stuck and they're miserable. And yeah,
And it's, one of the other, one of the big misconceptions, one of the other big misconceptions when it comes to the construction industry is that you're going to have to work really hard, that it's a labor intensive industry. And like the one piece that I put back out to that, and you know this, Nate, because I mean, we both started in construction, yet now we're business owners.
yeah,
And when you look at it, it's like I work harder now as a business owner than on what I used to work whenever I was in the field. So actually doing one of the trades. And no matter what your industry is or what your job or career you've chosen is, when you want to be successful at it, you're going to work hard. It doesn't matter.
yeah,
It just depends on the type of hard work that works for you, and that's so like looking at those things, it's you're going to put effort in. So find something that you can do well. And a lot of that comes down to exploring it. I mean, this is one of the great times, like, especially if you're a young person right now. So when you're in your teen years, so you especially your mid to late teen years, this is your opportunity to go out and test so many different opportunities. Go work at Starbucks to check it out if you want to. Go and volunteer at a hospital. So and do some things there to find out whether if that's a route that you like. Go and work with someone who's working in construction. There's so many different places that you can go and get some experience and just get a taste of it. Now, the one thing I will warn everybody about, when you go and do that in the beginning, so you're not going to be good. And that
yeah,
means that it's going to feel like a lot of effort because it is. You're learning something new. That's what it comes down to. And go and look for some of those signs like you were talking about earlier, Nate. People get out in the field and they start doing stuff and they love getting their hands dirty. So, and it makes them feel good. And they see what's being accomplished. Pay attention to how you're responding to those, whatever you're doing for that type of thing. Are there things about that you like that really excite you? Maybe it's something in customer service. I mean, I've worked on Disney property before. I love talking to people. I love hearing their stories, love being able to go ahead and help them get whatever they're looking for as far as at Disney. It was the experience of being at Disney. And I've carried that through in my business. And I realized that's part of what lit me up. And that's part of what I've included with my construction company is it's not just about the business of me going ahead and renovating someone's house or building them a new house. It's the experience I deliver to them that's above what everybody else does. And like that lights me up and creates a great piece, a great product for my homeowners is what it does at the same time. And it's to look at some of those pieces. And the only way you do that is really getting out there and experiencing it as opposed to just taking people's words for this is what you've got to do.
yeah. And I think the other part too is like there's a mental aspect and there's a physical aspect, right? And it boggles my mind that people will pay a ton of money to go to a gym and go work out on free weights or go to their CrossFit or what have you. But then they look at this other thing where it's like it's not as strenuous as all of those others, and you get paid to do that versus paying somebody else to go to the field and go to their gym. And so consider it as like a paid workout experience. The other part
Literally.
of it too is that as you progress, the physical side goes down and the mental side goes up, because everybody's got to start somewhere, right? And the lowest part of the totem pole is working your muscles to be able to make money.
Hmm.
And that's a short time period,
Right.
because then you elevate up into the next piece, right? Like once you know what to do because you physically done it, now you can move into the point of teaching somebody else how to do that job. And
Hmm.
most of those don't last long. I mean, you can
Right.
have a 3 months, 6 months, a year in a position to learn how to do it. And then next thing you know, you're teaching somebody else how to do it. So
Hey, you're running the crew at that point. You're the one planning the job out. You're the one going ahead and laying out what's going to happen that day on the job site. And that's, I mean, like I had that same experience whenever I was younger working for other people. It's like I went and busted my butt as a laborer and they saw what I was doing and they're like, all right, well, we're going to give you a little bit more. So, and a little bit more and a little bit more. And all of a sudden now you're the one running the crew. So, in a very short amount of time. And that's like that career progression piece. So, in construction is great because you really, you're not able to get topped out in any way, shape, or form when it comes to construction. Because when
yeah,
you start out as the laborer, then you turn into the skilled person on whatever crew it is, whether it's as a plumber, as an electrician, as a framer. So you become the knowledgeable person who's now running things. So which means you get to do different things. You're the ones figuring out. And that way you're working with, like you talked about, working with your brain and your body at the same time. So and you get to
yeah.
play back and forth a little bit that way. And then you get that opportunity if it's something that appeals to you, you get to be the person you can open up your own company, well, and start doing the same exact thing and bringing people into the industry. And that just elevates it to a whole nother level. And now you become that business person at the same time, outside of just being in your specific industry. And that's the great thing. And once you do that, sky's the limit. So for whatever you want to go ahead and do, you create where that boundary is. And that's the nice thing is that, like I said, you just don't get that. There's no one saying you're unable to do this. It's like whatever you put the effort into will go ahead and translate into where your results are going to end up at.
And I would encourage anybody who has um, somebody, a younger person in their life, like you're a parent and you have a child, or you're in your 40s, 50s, 60s, and you've got a nephew or a niece or a grandchild or whatever, and they're in that range of like, I don't know what I'm doing in my life. I would encourage you to push them into something that's going to be like this kind of industry where it's needed, it's got a long future base, that it's unrockable by all the ups and downs from the economy, and give them some stability in their life and give them a direction and push them into something like this. And I sincerely encourage you.
That piece that you're talking about there, Nate, about that stability piece, I think
Yeah,
that's huge because there's
yeah,
so many people that are like AI right now is obviously one of the huge pieces that's coming out, and people are like, well, what's this going to mean for my job, and what's this going to mean for my career, and how's it going to affect me? It's going to take my job. The one thing you and I have talked about before is that AI is not taking over anything in construction. It'll be a piece, it'll be a tool that gets added
it'll be a
in to
tool.
be able to help out pieces.
Yeah,
The things in the field right now, there's no way. And that's like when people are like, well, what about robotics? At this point right now, that hasn't
we're
developed to the
50
point yet where it can be
years
done.
we're 50 years
At
away
least.
from robotics in the
Right.
construction.
Right.
And then, and even in then, they're still going to have somebody driving the piece behind there.
Yeah.
But I, I'll tell you a story. When I right before I got married, I went to my future mother and father-in-law, and we were having a conversation. I was asking them that I want to get married to their daughter, and they asked me a question back, and they said, "Well, how are you going to be able to provide for her?" And I looked at her, and this was my mother-in-law, and I told her, I said, my industry is unbreakable. And she looked at me all crazy. And she comes from a corporate world, and she comes from, having a retirement plan and a 401k and
Right.
structure and everything else. And she looked at me side eyed and she was like, "What do you mean?" I said, "My industry has been around since the beginning of time.
Right.
It is the one of the foundational industries of the world, right? Everybody needs a place to live. It will not go away tomorrow. It will not go away in 50 years. It will not go away in 100 years. It will not go away in 1,000 years." I said, people live on this planet and they have to have shelter. That's number one. Number two, My specific industry of restoration is recession proof because I don't care what happens in the economy. I don't care what happens across, the world. People living in houses, things are going to break. So they're going to need to be restored and repaired. And so therefore, I will never be out of a job ever. And here we are many years down the road, and I have not missed a day of work. And my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, they understood what I was saying to them, and
Right.
they gave me their blessing. But over the years, they've had me do many projects for them around their house and around for their friends, and it's one of those things where I think they've got to a point where they understand, like, this is a respectable career. When they started out, they didn't
Right.
think that
Right.
because that wasn't a part of their minds, not their mind frame, right? They were like, "This is corporate America. This is how we
Mhm.
structure. This is how we build."
Right.
And so I'm glad that I didn't follow the traditional path. I'm glad I didn't get off of my path to meet their
Mhm.
expectations of what they wanted. It's been a
And,
great life for us.
and that's the part that I put out to challenge anybody right now who's thinking about it. One of the biggest things, if you look at people who have been successful in anything in life, so the majority of them have done the opposite of what everybody else was doing. Because when
Yeah.
the herd is moving one way, that means you've got saturation. Just look at, like, if you look at the example of the stock market. So
Mhm.
whenever everybody's pumping money into the stock market, that's your time to get out of the market, because the people who are going to make the money have already put their money in. All these new people are raising all the prices up. So, which means that the people who originally got in pull out their money now and make their actually realize their profit. And
Mhm.
then all these people who are pumping all that money in, now their stuff starts to go down because those big investors in the beginning have now pulled
Pulled
their
it out.
money out. So, and now everything starts to shrink, which means that those people walking in on the back end are the people who actually get hurt the worst, unfortunately, is what ends up happening. And it's literally the same thing. Look at it this way. If you're looking at industries now, whenever Nate and I were younger, the big push was you've got to go to college. You've got to be able to go ahead and do these things because this is the way to be successful. And that, if you really look at anything like that, any narrative that's being pushed, why are they pushing it?
Yeah.
And back then, the push was because they needed those white collar workers. They need people to be, that was when computers were just really getting going. So it's like,
Yeah.
we need people to be able to do these types of things. And they didn't have them. So the push was go to college, learn this stuff so we can go ahead and fill those pieces. Well, guess what? They did a great job of marketing it and a great job of pushing it. And now you've got a huge lack of people in the trades, which are the foundational things of literally everything we've got in our lives, from our roads to our buildings that we live in.
Yeah.
So to all the places we go and shop. And like, I looked up a quick stat before we got on today. So for the number of construction workers, this is just residential. This isn't construction across the board. This is residential construction workers that we need right now. So there's 3 different states. So that had the top 3 states, and you could probably guess which ones they are, Nate. So you live in one, I live in one, and then
Yeah.
California is always one. So as
Yeah.
far as that goes. So, but California needs 665,000 residential construction workers to meet their demand.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys need 568,000. So, and in Florida, we need 398,000.
Well, and part of that, I mean, that's an incredible stat, right? When you
That's a
think about it,
million and a half people in 3 states, Nate. That's
that
not
it
counting
needed
the other
it needed
47
right now,
right now.
right now. And here's and I get I'm really intimate with this, right? And it's a great stat, but it one of the reasons that we need that many people is that we have more people than we have housing.
Hmm.
And if you get into the real estate investment world and you understand all of the ins and outs about, construction and real estate and everything else, understand that residential drives the path, right? So I have to have enough homes for people to live in to then build buildings that they can then shop in. And then I also have to build roads for them to get to the residential pieces and get to the construction or the shop to buy and the grocery store and this, right? So residential leads the path into these different industries, right? And right now, across America, we are I'm gonna speak in like probably a foreign term, right? But in the investment world, we look at how many houses, how many days on market, how many months of inventory do we have? And the months of inventory is really important, right?
Right.
Because for a sustainable society, a typical days of inventory or months of
Balanced
inventory,
market.
a
Yeah.
balanced market should be somewhere between 4 and 6 months.
Mhm.
And right now we're sitting at a month and a half.
Yep.
Some
I was
some
gonna say that's where Florida's at right now. Is I think it's even less than 45 days right now.
yeah, it's a month and a half worth of inventory. And some of them are, some of the slower states, middle of the road, middle of the country, I mean, are, 2 months, but we're still below across the board, which means all of the workers that were in Texas are now in Idaho, they're in Michigan, they're spread throughout the country because they need work too, and there's no workforce there. Texas used to have a huge workforce that came over the border
Mm-hmm.
that was just there to do work, and they would
Right.
work for 6 months, and then they would go home for 6 months, and then they come
Right.
back for 6 months, and then they go home for 6 months. They can't go back because there's nobody else to fill in the spot, so they're having to stay here,
Right.
which is part of the migration problem or the immigration problem, but nobody wants to bring that up. But there's a reason why we're allowing so many immigrations to come across, because we need to fill positions.
Right.
And not everybody can be a manager of a position without actually doing a position.
No.
And all right, so you
And
get me off on a whole other topic and
yeah,
a
as I
whole
say, in
other.
construction, there is only one path to be the manager owner, and that's through. So actually
That's
doing
it.
it.
But I come back and I'm sorry to get off on a tangent. We'll probably dive into this conversation
We
a lot
definitely
more
will, no
later.
question.
But the reality of it is that we are so far behind that it's going to take so long to get caught up that even if we injected every college student that's currently there in across America and engaged every college student today into this industry, we still wouldn't have enough kids.
Not even close. And that's the statistic that I've heard repeatedly, throughout the years. And what we're looking at right now of just getting people in the industry just to go ahead and fill open positions right now. And the part that no one or very few people look at is how many people are retiring out, because the average age right now of people in construction is older. Like Nate said earlier,
Yeah.
the younger people coming in are really the strength, the labor, the actual physical portion of it in the beginning. And that's not there right now. I mean, literally, right now, for every 100 people that retire in construction, there's 7 coming in. So that number that we've been talking about is going to get dramatically worse very fast. So is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So what that presents for anyone who's thinking about it is that this is a huge opportunity because of the fact that there's no one there. You can come in, put the effort in, still learn from people that know, and then be able to literally go ahead and write your own ticket. And I mean, that's part of, we're going to get into another podcast later on where we talk about some of the options as far as what industries are open, as far as that goes, what some of the options are for you, and then what the pay is. But just to give you an idea right now on the pay range, so you range anywhere from the mid 40s, so all the way up to 6 figures in this industry. And that's for the workers. That's not for the owners of the companies.
Yeah.
So that's
That's for
literally for the
like
people.
getting started
Mm-hmm.
the first 2 to 3 years.
Correct.
That's $40,000 to $100,000.
Mm-hmm.
Starting out to about 3 years in.
Right.
I don't know. It makes sense to me.
Yeah.
You can go to college, you can spend $250,000 and be in debt, or you can go to work, make $40,000 a year, then $50,000 a year, $75,000 a year, $100,000 a year, in less time than it would be to get your degree. I don't know. Makes sense to me, but I'm not a genius.
And I'm with you. Like the math doesn't math as far as I'm concerned. Whenever you go ahead and get that degree, unless you're in a specialty that you have to have that. So if you're going ahead and doing anything else, you're accumulating a ton of debt that you're now going to have to pay back at a salary of, a lot of times the college graduates that are coming out are making less than the guys who are starting in construction are right now. Yeah. Which means that you've accumulated high 5 figures, low 6 figures of debt to come out and make $30,000 to $40,000 a year. It's a long road to financial freedom at that point.
Even if they come out and they're making $60,000 a year.
Yeah.
You've got $250,000 worth of debt and you got $60,000 a year in salary, right? Mm-hmm. Well, how long does it take you to pay off the $250,000 in debt?
Mm-hmm.
25 years.
At least. And that at the same time, while you're paying that off, then you have the challenges of everything else that comes into life of, your cars, your houses, your family, and your own children, and your aging parents, and all of those pieces that you
Well,
haven't had
those
to
are,
think
they're
about
not
yet.
even thinking about that now.
Yeah,
They're just worried.
exactly.
They're, people are still worried about like, oh, Biden's going to give us a free, debt-free college tuition. Just kind of keep going. And I hope that he does, right? I think college has gotten to a point where it's too expensive and the
Agreed.
faculty is making way too much money and they're pushing
Mhm.
agendas that don't need to be pushed. And it was supposed to be about higher education, right?
Right.
And we don't give higher education. We just give an
An ideology.
opinionated component to it and push them along and then charge them an extreme amount of money to learn their thought process, which great, have at it, whatever. But they
Well,
never
that
come out with tangible skills. And that's the problem that I have. When I see so many people that come out with general studies as their degree, and they struggled for 6 years to get the general studies degree, and they go out to get a job, then anything, and then they end up becoming a waiter. I, me personally, I'm upset. I'm mad about it because that's a waste of time. It's a waste of energy. It's a waste of just moral fiber, you know. And anyway, you're
it's
gonna get me
just
on another soapbox.
and that's part of where the challenge comes into all of this, is that there just isn't a good route whenever you go down that. Unless you're doing whatever you're looking to do, you should have a direct route to what it's going to mean to you and how it's going to translate. And you come out to, like Nate said, general studies. But I mean, some of the degrees you've got, ancient European history. All right, how many jobs in the world are there going to be for those types of things, and what's I mean, if it's your passion, awesome, kill it if it's your passion. If it's not, though, you want to look at possibly other options. That's what I say, just possibly. Doesn't have to be. So look at some of the other things that are out there. And that's really what this podcast is about what's stopping you, what's holding you back. Realize, ask those questions. Never, ever let anybody else's opinion, so what their beliefs are, totally guide you without questioning that and figuring out where you lie in this. So get information from people who are in the industry right now, who are doing things, and find out, is this the right thing? Always have that inquisitive mind now and throughout your life, because it'll serve you well. And that's the best part about it, is explore and find what it is before you make that decision that costs you a chunk of money like that. So, because that chunk of money is money you're gonna, whether they give it to you free now or not. So if they give it to you free, I guarantee you're paying for it. You just haven't realized it yet. You haven't gotten to that point to realize where that money's actually coming from. um, do what you want to do, so as far as this goes, but give everything an option. Think about what's going to be the best thing for you. Ask lots of questions, and explore every opportunity that's out there before you make that lifelong decision. So stay tuned to the next podcast we've got. I already said we're going to be talking about money in the industry. How much money can you make in this industry, and what are some of the different types of jobs or different types of trades inside of the construction industry, because you just don't know what might actually be something that appeals to you, because you just don't know what's out there. If you got value from this, share these hacks to other builders or future builders. Make sure to like this episode and take 10 seconds to give a review or rating. With more reviews and higher ratings, we can help out more current and future builders of America. And we want to know what other topics you might want to hear more about, or construction professionals we should invite on as guests. You can let us know these in the comments here, or on social media, wherever you heard about the Builder Hacks podcast from. Keep building our future, building America.